On my 64th birthday, I woke up to silence. Not the peaceful kind, the aching kind, the kind of quiet that follows you from room to room, thick and hollow. The clock ticked louder than it needed to. The coffee I poured tasted burnt, and the birthday card I'd bought for myself the day before, just a silly tradition I started after my husband died, sat unopened on the kitchen table. The card said, "You're still blooming," a picture of sunflowers. I didn't feel like anything was blooming. I felt wilted. Still, I showered, curled my thinning gray hair, and put on my softest beige cardigan, the one with the little snag near the pocket where my granddaughter once tugged too hard when she was learning to walk. I brought deviled eggs, made them that morning. A little too much paprika, but they looked pretty in the Tupperware. I wore a fresh coat of lipstick, dusty rose. I even slipped a $10 scratch-off into my purse. A treat, just for me. When I got to Rachel's house, the table was already set. Plastic forks, paper plates, a crooked happy birthday banner sagging over the patio door, my name misspelled Ellie with a Y. No one noticed. Not even Rachel. She was too busy fiddling with decorations and yelling at the younger kids to stop touching the balloons. Jacob, my oldest grandson, was sprawled across a lawn chair like he owned the place, vaping, wearing that same black hoodie he always did, the one with the sleeves chewed up. He didn't even look up when I greeted him. "Happy birthday, Grandma," he mumbled, not even removing the vape from his mouth. His voice was flat, disinterested, like he was reading from a script. Mark, Rachel's husband, had a beer in his hand already. 11:30 in the morning. His shirt was wrinkled, his breath sour when he brushed past me, without so much as a nod. I set the deviled eggs down and told myself not to take it personally. Just get through the day, smile, and maybe enjoy the cake if I picked the frosting off. But then, I saw the cake. Store-bought carrot. I'm allergic to carrot. I'd told Rachel that before, years ago, when I ended up in urgent care after a church potluck. She hadn't remembered. Or worse, hadn't cared. I stared at it a little too long. No candles, no writing, just a blank round cake from the discount bakery. Like they'd grabbed the first thing they saw. My throat tightened, but I smiled anyway. The kind of smile that stretches your skin but doesn't touch your eyes. It all unraveled fast. Jacob started fighting with his little brother about a video game, something stupid, some argument about who beat what level, loud, brash, over nothing. The volume rose, the tension simmered, and before I knew it, my voice came out, soft but firm. "Let's keep the peace today," I said. "Just for today. It's my birthday."
That's all I said. No shouting. No blame.
Just a tired woman asking for a little quiet. Jacob snapped around, like I'd insulted his very soul. "You always act like you're the boss," he snarled. "You ain't anymore." He stood up, taller than me now, thinner, but filled with that wild, directionless rage teenage boys think makes them powerful. I looked up at him, confused, hurt. And that's when it happened. His hand came across my face, open-palmed, sudden and sharp. Not a joke, not a mistake. It cracked like a thunderclap in my ears. The plastic fork in my hand dropped to the ground. My cheek burned hot, a flush of shock and humiliation racing to my scalp. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I waited, just waited, for someone to say something. Rachel froze, her eyes wide, mouth slightly open, but nothing came out. Not even a whisper. Mark looked at the beer in his hand and took another sip, as if the scene unfolding wasn't his concern. The other grandkids looked down at their plates. One of them started chewing even faster, like maybe if they ate quickly enough, the moment would pass. No one moved. No one asked if I was okay. No one told him to stop. I stood there, my body suddenly aware of its age, of every ache, every gravity-drawn line. I looked at the carrot cake, at the sad, sagging banner, at the half-eaten potato salad, and the deviled eggs no one had touched. And then I placed the plate gently on the table. I reached into my purse, pulled out the scratch-off I'd brought that morning. A quiet little indulgence I thought might give me a smile, and slipped it back into my bag. My voice came out small but steady. "I'm going to lie down," I said. I turned and walked inside, the silence behind me deafening. No footsteps followed. No one called after me. The guest room door clicked softly behind me. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands trembling. My cheek throbbed, but it wasn't the pain that cut deepest. It was the confirmation. The slow, creeping knowledge I had tried so hard to ignore. I didn't matter, not to them. I waited for someone to knock, to say they were sorry, to ask if I was all right. No one came. And that was the moment I knew I wasn't just hurt. I was finished. I didn't pack a bag. That night, after sitting on the guest bed for what felt like hours, I stood up, straightened my cardigan, picked up my purse, and walked out the front door. No goodbyes, no explanations. No one stopped me. My car was parked 2 blocks down. I remember the walk more than the drive. The way the evening light pooled on the sidewalk. The way my shoes echoed against the concrete, like footsteps in a funeral procession no one bothered to attend. I got in, started the engine, and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to be gone, to put distance between myself and that table full of silence, between my burning cheek and the faces that had watched it happen without blinking. After 2 hours of driving, I saw a vacancy sign blink in red neon beside a faded roadside motel. It wasn't much. The parking lot was cracked, the bushes overgrown, but the office open light was on. That was enough. I paid in cash. The woman behind the counter didn't even ask for ID, just slid a key across the counter and pointed toward room 7. It smelled like bleach and old cigarettes, and the air conditioner groaned when I switched it on. I sat on the edge of the bed for a while, holding my purse like it was something sacred. Then I remembered the ticket. That dumb little scratch-off. My one treat. I pulled it out slowly, like it might crumble. My hands were still shaking. I grabbed the quarter from my keychain, the one I always used for Aldi carts, and began to scratch. One number at a time. The dust curled up in little gray flakes onto my lap. I blinked. 3 times. Then again, $5 million. I didn't scream. I didn't laugh. I didn't even move for a full minute. I just stared. Not because I thought it was fake, but because it wasn't. Because something had shifted. Because the world had tilted, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to stand upright again. Then the tears came. Hard, loud, unstoppable. Not for the money, but for what it meant. That I didn't have to go back. That I didn't have to sit across from Jacob or Mark or even Rachel ever again if I didn't want to. That I didn't have to shrink myself to fit inside their unspoken rules. I could disappear. And maybe, just maybe, I could build something where I mattered. I stayed in that motel room for 2 nights. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't open the curtains. I just lay there with the ticket beside me on the nightstand and let the silence clean the wounds their silence had left. On the morning of the 3rd day, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I looked in the mirror, my hair frizzed from the AC, the redness on my cheek, faded, now but still ghosting under the skin, and said aloud, "You're not going back." And I believed it. I took the motel's scratchy notepad from the nightstand drawer and wrote the only letter I would ever send them. Don't call. I'm not lost. I'm done.
I'll be safe.
Don't come looking. I don't want to be found. I folded it, slipped it into a plain white envelope, and drove to a gas station next door. Bought a coffee I didn't drink and asked the cashier where the mailbox was. I didn't sign the letter. Not because I was angry. Because I didn't think they'd need to see my name to know it was me. Back in the car, I took out my phone. Not to call Rachel, not even to look at photos of the grandkids. I Googled lottery claims, anonymous Georgia, scrolled through legal advice sites, skimmed over articles about sudden wealth syndrome, and winners getting hunted down by cousins they hadn't seen in years. Eventually I found a number. The woman who answered at the lottery office sounded like she'd just opened a pack of gum. "I'd like to claim anonymously," I said, "and I want to set up a trust." She was quiet for a second, then said, "We get that more than you'd think." I answered, "I doubt that." She chuckled once, gave me a list of attorneys and a timeline, told me where to go in person and what documents to bring. I thanked her, then hung up. I didn't feel excited. I didn't feel powerful. I felt like I'd just walked off stage in the middle of a bad play, mid-monologue, like I should have done it years ago. That afternoon, I drove 2 towns over, bought a burner phone and a cheap laptop with cash, checked into a new motel under the name Louise Carey, my mother's maiden name. No one questioned it. No one looked twice, and that was the most comforting part of it all. Being invisible was finally my choice. 4 days later, the money hit the trust account. The lawyer I hired over the phone, recommended by the lottery office, called to confirm the deposit. I told him to set up an LLC, called The Lottery. I didn't want my name on anything. Not directly. I wasn't broke anymore. But I still didn't feel rich. I still ate peanut butter crackers for dinner. Still reused my motel towel. Still opened and closed the motel mini fridge like something new might appear inside. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt suspended, like the story was still being written, and I didn't know the ending yet. The motel lobby gave out free coffee in a thin tan paper cup with a white plastic lid that didn't fit quite right. I sipped it anyway, seated by the window in one of those fake leather chairs that always smelled faintly like mildew and old books. The rain outside was soft, not a storm, not even steady, just a gentle drizzle, the kind that settles into the sidewalks and makes everything smell like moss and rubber tires. I watched it for a long time, then I reached into my bag and pulled out the crumpled takeout menu from the Thai place next door. There was just enough blank space on the back. I clicked the motel pen and began to write. Don't call. I'm not lost. I'm done. I'll be safe. Don't come looking. I don't want to be found. Same words, different surface. But this one felt final. I folded the menu into thirds and wrote Rachel on the front. No last name, no return address. Just the weight of 6 short lines carrying everything I no longer had the energy to say out loud. Back in the room, I stared at my reflection in the mirror over the sink. Pale, lines deeper than I remembered. Eyes rimmed in fatigue. I whispered my own name aloud, just to hear it. Elaine. It sounded like a stranger. The next morning, I mailed the letter. No ceremony. No second thoughts. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I left my phone on the nightstand, wrapped it in a motel towel, and left it behind. It buzzed once, just as I was closing the door. I didn't check it. I didn't want to know if it was Rachel, or Jacob, or no one. Freedom meant letting it die in silence. I drove to a copy shop that shared a strip mall with a payday loan center and a nail salon. The windows were fogged from the inside. I asked the man at the counter, mid-20s, earbuds in, if he could print out a form I'd emailed from my new burner laptop. He didn't look up, just said, yeah, 30 cents a page. I paid in cash. The document was simple, a trust form. I'd filled it out using a free template and reviewed it 3 times against what the lottery lawyer sent. The name of the trust? EM Holdings. No sentimental name, no initials that meant anything, just enough to exist on paper quietly, legally, invisibly. I signed the paperwork in the motel room with the complimentary pen, pressing hard so the ballpoint wouldn't skip. Then I took a photo of each page and emailed it to the lawyer with the subject line, as discussed. Please confirm. He replied 2 hours later with a thumbs up emoji and one word, received. It felt absurd that the foundation of a new life mine could begin with that. I ordered a pizza that night. I hadn't eaten anything warm in 3 days. It arrived lukewarm and rubbery, but I sat on the edge of the bed and ate every bite. No distractions, no TV, just me and the hum of the AC, and the vague realization that I was alive and safe and entirely unaccounted for. That's when I thought about Lily. I don't know why she came to mind just then. Maybe it was the coldness in the room, or the smell of the rain on the motel carpet. But her face appeared unannounced and uninvited, clear as day. The last time I saw her had been a Thanksgiving dinner 4 years ago. She had brought green bean casserole. Everyone complained silently about it, but I ate 2 helpings because she'd made it from scratch. I remembered how she'd quietly helped clean up after the meal, without being asked, how she had offered to wash the dishes when Mark had disappeared into the garage with a beer, and how, when I got a headache halfway through dessert, she came and found me on the porch, pressed a warm mug of chamomile tea into my hand, and said, I used to get migraines too. I swear by this. No one else had even noticed I was gone. I remembered how she used to call me Miss Elaine, even after she and Jacob split up. How she would draw little cartoon muffins on napkins when I told her I always wanted to run a bakery, but never had the money. She was the only one who ever said thank you and made it sound like it came from somewhere real. And she had vanished. Not just from Jacob's life, from all of ours. Quietly erased. No one told me about the divorce until weeks after it happened. Rachel just said it didn't work out, like they were discussing leftovers. I'd asked about Lily once, and Jacob rolled his eyes and said, "She's not family anymore." Like that was enough to write her out of memory. But now, sitting in a motel room with $5 million I didn't know what to do with, I thought maybe I could find her. Not because I wanted revenge, because I wanted to do something good with someone good. I opened my burner laptop and typed Lily Monroe, Savannah, Georgia into the search bar. A few LinkedIn profiles came up. A community fundraiser, a bakery Pinterest board with scribbled sketches of menu ideas. Nothing concrete. Then, on Instagram, I found her, a blurry photo in a dim kitchen. Her face older, hair pulled back in a messy bun, flour on her cheeks. Holding up a tray of lopsided blueberry scones with a caption that read, "Still just dreaming. Flowers cheaper than hope." I stared at that photo for a long time. Then, with my heart hammering like I was breaking some law, I tapped message and typed, "You still want to bake?" I didn't expect her to answer. I just needed to send it, to open a door, even if I had to wait outside it for a while. She didn't answer right away. I didn't expect her to. It had been years, and I wasn't even sure she still remembered me. Not really. Not as anything more than a footnote in a painful chapter she'd probably spent the last few years trying to forget. I stared at the message I'd sent. "You still want to bake?" The words looked dumb now, vague, borderline cryptic. I hovered over the unsend button for a moment, then closed the app. I told myself not to check again for at least a day. Let it be. Let her live her life without this strange burner profile interruption. But of course, I checked 10 minutes later. And again after that. Every hour, then every half hour. Like a child waiting by the mailbox for a letter that might never come. I tried to distract myself, made another list of bakery names. Names I liked, names I hated. Mia's Muffins, too cutesy. Flour and Bone, too grim. The Second Rise. I circled that one, not just for dough, for us. I Googled commercial kitchen rentals, looked up food safety certifications in Chatham County. I even watched YouTube videos on starting a bakery from scratch, most of them hosted by over-caffeinated millennials with ring lights and white kitchens I could smell through the screen. Still nothing from Lily. That night, I slept with the phone on my chest. When I woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, I tapped it on instinct. One notification. Who is this? My heart thudded. I sat back on the motel bed, phone clutched in both hands like it might leap away. Her message was simple, suspicious. Fair. I didn't answer right away. I sat with it, thumb hovering, debating every word. Then, I typed. Elaine, Jacob's grandmother. I'm safe. I have something I want to talk to you about. If you're still in Savannah. I stared at it for 2 full minutes before hitting send. It felt like throwing a bottle into the ocean and watching the tide pull it away. No control after that. Just waiting. She didn't answer that day, but she did the next. You're serious? I replied instantly. I am. Then nothing for another hour. Then, a location. A cafe. Small, independent. I Googled it. Near Forsyth Park. The kind of place with mismatched mugs and plants in the window. She told me to meet her Thursday at 3. It was Tuesday. I had 2 days to pace the floor of the motel room, rehearse every sentence, every explanation, every justification. 2 days to doubt myself, to imagine her walking in, seeing me, and walking right back out. 2 days to talk myself into and out of what I was about to propose. By Thursday morning, I was dressed by 10. I changed my shirt 3 times. Ended up wearing a simple cream blouse under my cardigan. I kept my hair down, wore a little lipstick. Something neutral. I sat in the car outside the cafe at 2:25, then walked in at 2:40. She didn't arrive until 2:58, but I knew it was her the second the door opened. Lily. Older now, tired in the eyes, her hair was pulled back tight, a few wisps falling loose around her temples. She carried a toddler on her hip. A little girl maybe 2 years old, bundled in a jacket with a pink hood. Her face was peaceful, half asleep. Mia. It had to be. Lily saw me, froze. I stood up slowly. My hands were shaking. It's really me, I said. She hesitated, then walked over and slid into the booth, gently laid Mia down beside her, who stirred, then nestled back into sleep. Lily didn't speak right away, just looked at me. What happened? She finally asked, not accusatory, just quiet. I told her everything. I didn't sugarcoat it. Not the slap, not the silence, not the motel, not the scratch-off ticket, and what it turned into. I watched her face shift slowly as I spoke. At first, disbelief, then tight-lipped anger, then something softer. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she exhaled and asked, "Why me?" The words hit hard. I expected them, but still, they settled deep. Because you were kind to me, I said. Because you never made me feel like I was in the way, because when no one else noticed me, you did. You brought tea when I had migraines. You helped clear the table. You called me Miss Elaine like I was someone worth respecting. I paused. And because I remember you talking about opening a bakery, I remember the sketches, the ideas. I remember thinking, this girl has it. She just doesn't have help. And now, I can help. She looked down, then away. Her lip trembled. What's the catch? She whispered. There isn't one. She still didn't speak. Her hands were clenched on her lap. Mia shifted in the seat beside her, murmuring in her sleep. I just want to do something good with someone good. I expected tears, but she didn't cry. I did just a little. Behind my teacup. We sat there, quiet for a while. Then Lily nodded. Okay, she said. Let's talk again. In 2 days. We didn't hug. We didn't make any promises. But when I stepped out of that cafe, I didn't walk. I floated. When Lily said okay, I didn't exhale. Not yet. Hope is a quiet thing. It doesn't come all at once. It sneaks in around the edges, like a draft under a locked door. She'd agreed to talk again in 2 days, and that alone was a crack in the wall I'd been staring at for years. Back in my motel room that night, I sat at the little laminate desk and opened the spiral notebook I'd bought from the Dollar General down the street. I titled the first page in capital letters, Bakery Plan. Then I just stared at the page. I didn't know where to start, so I started with her. Lily, talented, kind, smart. Yes, smart. Deserves better. And beneath that, I wrote, do not let her think she's a burden. That part felt important. I thought back to the way she'd held Mia at the cafe, like she was trying to shrink herself into invisibility while still being a good mother, a good guest, a good ex-daughter-in-law, a good everything. I recognized that posture. I'd worn it myself too many times to count. I jotted down ideas, names, menu items, layout concepts, then flipped to a fresh page and sketched the only bakery I'd ever loved, the one my mother used to take me to as a girl, where everything smelled like warm sugar and yeast and safety. I drew crooked lines for the counter, dots for the chairs, a little shelf of jams by the window. The next morning, I took a walk. It felt strange, being outside with purpose again. The motel neighborhood wasn't much gas stations, a defunct bowling alley, a few boarded-up storefronts, but 2 blocks down, on the corner of a sleepy intersection, I saw it. A worn-down space with a cracked front window and a for-lease sign barely hanging from one rusty nail. The old awning still read, Suds and Such. Probably used to be a dry cleaner, but there was something about it. The bones of the place. A wide corner door, a back entrance, a row of small dusty windows that looked like they'd once let in morning sun. I took down the number and called. The landlord answered on the 3rd ring. Yes, it's available. Rent's cheap if you're paying in cash. No, I won't renovate it, take it as is. I said I'd think about it. But in my mind, I'd already walked through the door. 2 days later, Lily and I met again, this time at a diner near her apartment. Mia was wide awake and chewing on a jelly packet, like it was candy. We sat in a booth with vinyl seats that stuck to the backs of our thighs, and I pulled out my notebook. She brought one too, a spiral-bound one with a ripped cover and pages that fluttered as she opened it. Inside were sketches, pages and pages of them, muffins, layouts, menu mock-ups, names scribbled in every margin. I had to squint to read some of them. Honey salt rolls, brown butter church cake, lemon lavender nap scones. She said, almost shyly, I don't have professional training. just recipes I worked on during Mia's naps. I told her that made them better. Then I told her about the storefront. I described it in detail, from the cracked window to the dusty sunlight. She pulled Mia into her lap and asked, "Are you sure about this? This much money?" I told her yes. Then I said something I hadn't said to anyone since before my husband passed. "This isn't charity, it's correction." Lily didn't press. She just looked at me with a kind of cautious respect, like she wanted to believe me, but didn't know if she was allowed to. I didn't bring up Jacob or Rachel, or the things they used to say about her behind closed doors, that she was too sensitive, that she was weak, that she was just chasing pipe dreams. She already knew. I could see it in the way she moved carefully, like someone who had learned to tiptoe around judgment, like someone who'd been told too many times she wasn't enough, or worse, too. So we talked logistics. What a startup would require. How we'd divide responsibilities. She'd bake. I'd handle permits, vendors, leases. We agreed not to rush, but we also knew we couldn't afford to hesitate. That afternoon, over 2 refills of diner coffee and a shared biscuit, Mia smeared jelly on, we chose a name. Second Rise. It's about dough, Lily said. But also us. I didn't cry this time. I just smiled so hard, my cheeks hurt. The rest of that week, everything moved quickly. I met with the landlord, signed the lease in cash, and asked for 3 extra keys. I hired a contractor who used to go to the church I worked at before I retired. He gave me a discount without asking why, said he remembered how I used to sneak him banana bread during church cleanup. Lily started testing recipes in her apartment kitchen. She baked until 2 in the morning, most nights, sent me photos of muffins lined up on her kitchen counter. Little sticky notes labeling each version, too dense, not sweet enough. Try lemon zest. I started reading up on local sourcing, farmers markets, flour distributors, health inspection codes. I'd never used the phrase startup capital in my life, but now I said it into a phone call with a banker, and it didn't sound foreign. It sounded like I belonged to a version of myself I hadn't met yet, but already loved. Late one night, I stood in the motel bathroom, looked at my reflection in the spotted mirror, no makeup, gray roots showing, and whispered, "You're doing this." And I believed it. There's a kind of sacredness in the mess of beginnings. No grand openings, no music, just dust, plaster, sweat, and second-hand equipment that still smells faintly like burnt coffee and old ambition. The contractor started demo on a Monday. I watched him from the sidewalk as he hauled out a rusted clothing rack and a yellowed dry cleaning sign that read, "Thank you, come again," in fading red letters. Lily stood next to me with Mia strapped to her chest in a soft carrier, both of them wrapped in scarves because the heat hadn't been hooked up yet. She whispered, "I still don't believe this is real." I didn't answer right away. I was staring at the inside of the building, stripped down to beams and broken tile, like someone had taken off its makeup and finally let it breathe. "It's real," I said. "You're standing in it." We spent the rest of that day sketching ideas on brown butcher paper, taped to the window, counter here, oven there, tables by the front, kids' nook in the corner, with chalk and crayons. Mia drew a cookie with arms and a smiley face and named him Crumbles. I saved it. I saved everything, every scribbled note, every receipt, every photograph of Lily standing in flour-dusted jeans, holding up a crooked muffin like it was a trophy. The bakery became our ritual. Each morning, I'd show up early, my hands wrapped around a coffee from the gas station, and Lily would be right behind me, hair in a braid, Mia on her hip or strapped to her back, diaper bags slung over one shoulder like a warrior going into battle. We were building more than a business. We were rebuilding ourselves. Every tile we scrubbed, every nail we hammered, every list we crossed off, it all felt like stitching something back together that had been fraying for years. Lily called the bakery her third baby. First Jacob, then Mia, then this. I knew what she meant. When you've lost so much, anything you build with your own 2 hands becomes a kind of child. It carries your fears, your hopes, your name, just without the diapers. One afternoon, I sat on an overturned paint bucket in the back room and watched Lily test dough in a borrowed stand mixer from her neighbor. Mia napped on a blanket near the wall, flour still on her socks. "You know what the best part is?" I asked. Lily looked up, eyebrows raised. No one's watching us fail, I said. So we can only go up. She laughed, a real one this time. Not a polite smile, a throat-deep hand to her chest laugh that cracked through the quiet like sunlight. We called the inspector that Friday. He came in with a clipboard and a limp and said, "Let's see if this place is worth all this elbow grease." He passed us with minor notes. Add a hand-washing sign in the back. Repaint the baseboards. "I've seen worse," he grunted. "But this? You're on your way." Lily cried in the back room afterward. Just a few quiet tears she wiped with her apron. I didn't say anything, just handed her a tissue and poured us both sweet tea from a plastic jug. We didn't celebrate big. No confetti, no champagne. Just stayed late that night sanding counters and rearranging second-hand chairs until they didn't wobble. We weren't just preparing for customers. We were preparing for a new version of ourselves. The version that didn't flinch when people doubted us. The version that didn't ask for permission to belong. I took over sourcing and paperwork. I called local farmers and coordinated flour deliveries from a mill 2 counties over. I learned how to file quarterly taxes, set up payroll, and fill out food handler registrations. I didn't enjoy it, but I respected it, because it meant permanence. Meanwhile, Lily was recipe testing like a woman possessed. Some nights, she texted me photos at midnight, new cookie shapes, different ratios of brown to white sugar, updated glaze on her sweet tea pie. Every mistake became a lesson. Every success felt like magic. Mia started calling me Lila sometime around week 3. No one taught her that. She just said it one morning, while handing me a wooden spoon and asking for help. It stuck. I didn't correct her. I didn't have the heart to. One night, after we painted the front door a shade called Honey Warmth, Lily stood in the doorway and whispered, "What if no one comes?" I leaned beside her, hands in my cardigan pockets. "Then we eat everything ourselves and try again." She smiled, but didn't look convinced. I knew that fear. The fear that if you open the door and no one's there, it means you were wrong about everything. But I also knew this bakery wasn't just a risk. It was a reclamation. And you can't reclaim something by hiding from it. We worked 6 days a week. We printed our first batch of business cards at home, the ink smudging slightly on the corners. We hung a chalkboard menu that still had gaps in it because we hadn't finalized everything yet. And yet every morning when I unlocked that door and flipped the open sign hand-painted on repurposed wood by a friend of Lily's, it felt like I was unlocking something in myself. Something I'd buried long before Jacob raised his hand to me. Something even deeper than silence. It felt like worth. And I wasn't willing to let go of it now. We didn't plan a grand opening. No banners, no press, no countdowns, just a quiet Saturday morning where we unlocked the door and flipped the sign to open. That was it. Our chalkboard out front said, "Soft like your grandma's biscuits. Bold like her secrets. Come in. Stay a while." We sold 3 lemon lavender cookies, a slice of sweet tea pie, and 6 pecan bars that first day. It was enough. A nurse from the clinic down the street came in for coffee and left with 2 boxes of pastries for her coworkers. A high school student ordered 1 scone, then left a $5 tip. A man in a reflective vest came in on his lunch break, ate in silence, and nodded once on his way out. No words, just respect. We kept it small. 3 menu items, cash only. No photos, no website, just the work. Just that first night, after we cleaned the counters and swept the floor, I sat in the back with a mug of tea and stared at the wall. Lily sat beside me, her shoes kicked off, socks mismatched. Mia asleep in a blanket nest under the counter. She said, "It's really happening." And I whispered, "Yeah, it is." We went home tired, in the bones, but full. Word spread in small, human ways, one coworker telling another, someone snapping a photo of the chalkboard, a local Facebook mom group. By the second week, we had regulars. By the third, people knew us by name. Then the food blog posted. Lily had talked to a local blogger who popped in on a Tuesday. She shared our story, just part of it. The rise from scratch angle. Single, mom. New bakery. Nothing too personal. She didn't mention me by name. Didn't think it mattered. But the photo did. It was from our soft launch. Blurry. I was in the background, turned slightly, carrying a tray of muffins toward the kitchen. my cardigan visible, my face, partly in profile. I froze when I saw it. Lily had pulled it up on her phone while we were prepping for the morning rush. She stopped mid-sentence, screen glowing between us, and whispered, "Oh no." I looked at it. Read the caption. "Second rise, the Savannah Bakery built on grit and gratitude. Try the pecan bars. Stay for the spirit." And I knew immediately that Jacob would see it. And he did. By that afternoon, our inbox pinged. "A Jacob Monroe 93. I know she's with you. This is sick. What is this twisted little project?" Lily showed me her phone, without hesitation. Her hands were shaking. Her jaw clenched. "I'm blocking him," she said. But I shook my head. Wait. Wait for what? I want to see what he does." She looked at me like I was speaking another language. I didn't blame her. I wasn't sure why I said it either. Maybe some soft, stubborn part of me still wanted him to apologize, to explain, to act like the boy who used to pick dandelions and stick them in my coat pocket. But instead, he doubled down. By Friday, Rachel had called the bakery 5 times, left 2 voicemails. Her voice trembled in both, an edge of panic, of disbelief. "Mom, is this you? You can't just disappear like this. What are you doing?" I didn't call back. Not because I wanted to hurt her, but because I didn't have the strength to hold that conversation on my back again. Not yet. That night, I opened my laptop and searched my own name. There wasn't much public records, old church newsletters, a photo of me at a PTA meeting from the late 90s. But then I saw it, a Facebook post. From a girl who used to date Jacob. I barely remembered her, maybe met her twice. Her caption said, "Pretty sure that's Jacob's grandma at the new bakery in Savannah. The one who vanished after he slapped her. She rich now or something? Didn't she win the lottery? Wait, he slapped her?" I stared at the comments section. She disappeared? Wait, is this the chick from that bakery post? He hit her? Y'all serious? I didn't feel vindicated. I felt hollow, like the truth had been cut into small sensational pieces and fed to strangers for sport. That night, Lily and I cleaned in silence. Mia was unusually quiet, sensing something in the air. When I turned off the lights, Lily said, "It started, hasn't it?" I nodded. "It has." We didn't say what it meant. We both knew. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror in the bakery bathroom, fluorescent lights buzzing, apron covered in flour, and told myself, "You don't owe them anything." And I believed it. Mostly. It took less than a week for everything to tilt. Jacob didn't settle for text messages. He went further, predictably, dramatically, recklessly. He showed up on a podcast, a small one, out of Charleston. Nothing big. Some guy he used to bartend with started a show called Family Truths Unfiltered. I only knew about it because Lily found the clip. She played it for me in the back office, standing there with her phone clenched in both hands, eyes wide. The voice was unmistakably his. "I just don't understand," Jacob was saying. "How someone could win that kind of money and abandon their family. I mean, she raised us. She used to read to us. Now she's out here funding my ex-wife's revenge bakery. Come on." The host laughed. "Damn, man. That's wild." Jacob kept talking. Spun a version of reality I didn't recognize. Claimed he used to check in on me every week. That he helped with my bills. That he loved me, really loved me. I picked her up from the pharmacy. I paid for groceries. I looked out for her. I was the only one who did. Lie after lie. Not just exaggerations, flat fabrications, carved from the truth with surgical precision. I didn't speak while it played. I didn't even blink. Because I remembered. I remembered sitting in the DMV parking lot at 6 a.m. so he wouldn't have to wait in line. I remembered slipping $20 bills into his coat pockets when his card kept declining at gas stations. I remembered baking muffins for his job interviews that he never went to. But I also remembered his silence after the slap. His expressionless face as I stood there, stunned and red-cheeked, holding a paper plate of untouched carrot cake. And I realized it wasn't about forgetting. It was about rewriting. He wasn't content to let me leave. He needed to edit the ending so he wouldn't be the villain. So I became the ghost. The greedy grandma. The runaway millionaire with a grudge. Lily turned off the podcast when Jacob started crying. Fake crying. Just enough voice crack to sell the illusion. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I felt hollow, like he'd scooped out the truth and filled it with sawdust. Lily said, "Do we say something?" I shook my head. Let them scream. She didn't argue, but we both knew the noise wouldn't stop there. By that weekend, the bakery's page was getting flooded with messages. Shame on you. She abandoned her grandkids. Hope karma hits. She's just using you for clout. None of them knew me. Not really. But the internet doesn't care about details, just spectacle. I wanted to delete every comment, every review. I wanted to scream into the void until someone believed me. But Lily stopped me. She placed her hand gently over mine and said, "We keep serving." So we did. We baked. We swept. We rolled out dough and sprinkled cinnamon like nothing had changed. We smiled at customers, even when our hands trembled. But each morning after that, something shifted. I felt it in my fingers when I kneaded bread. In my chest, when I rang up someone's order. A fog. Not guilt. Not regret. Exhaustion. The kind of fatigue that isn't cured with sleep. Then Rachel called. Again, this time, her voice on the voicemail wasn't sharp. It was small. I heard it. "I don't know what to believe anymore. Call me. Please." I stared at the phone for a long time. I almost called back. Almost. I wanted to tell her Jacob was lying. That he was weaving gold out of garbage and pinning it to his chest like a medal. That I didn't leave, because I hated them, but because I couldn't keep pretending they still saw me as a person. But then I thought of her face on my birthday. Frozen, mouth open, but silent. The way she didn't flinch when her son hit me. The way she didn't move when I stood up and walked away. And I couldn't bring myself to call. I did the one thing I knew how to do. I baked. I taught Mia how to fold napkins and roll dough into balls. I let her decorate a batch of cookies with way too many sprinkles and smiled as she showed each one off like it was art. I watched Lily perfect a lemon lavender cookie that sold out every time it hit the counter. I existed loudly in the quietest way possible. We worked. We served. We held the line. But the truth sat in my throat like an unspoken sentence. The bakery wasn't just a business anymore. It was a battleground. And I had become the villain in someone else's redemption arc. Not because of what I'd done, but because they needed me to be. She came on a Tuesday. No call, no warning, just stood there outside the bakery in jeans and a hoodie, like she thought maybe dressing down would make her invisible. But I recognized her the moment I saw her shoulders, the way she held them, tight, defensive, like she was bracing for a door to slam in her face. Lily saw her first through the front window. She didn't say a word, just nodded toward the door and took Mia by the hand, walking to the back like she was giving me space I hadn't asked for, but suddenly, desperately needed. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, heart thudding harder than I cared to admit, and opened the door. "Hi, Mom." Her voice cracked halfway through the word. Mom, like it had to squeeze past a lump in her throat. It had been months, but it felt like years. I didn't hug her. I didn't cry. I just said, "Do you want tea?" She nodded. We walked inside. I poured 2 mugs of chamomile. We sat at the corner table near the window, the same table where Lily had first told me she still wanted to bake. Rachel didn't touch her tea at first, just stared at the surface like she was waiting for it to speak. Finally, she said, "I didn't know what to do that day." Her voice was quieter now, more worn than I remembered. She looked older, not in a wrinkled way in the bones, in the heaviness around her eyes. "When Jacob hit you," she said, "I froze, and then you left. And I thought, maybe you needed time. But then the ticket, and Lily, and the podcast, it all just..." She broke off, swallowed hard. I didn't stop him. I should have. I didn't answer right away. I had 1,000 thoughts, some sharp, some forgiving, some that wanted to cut, others that wanted to collapse. But I let her speak. She told me she'd tried calling, emailing, even drove by my old house a few times. When she heard my voice on Lily's voicemail greeting, she said she figured I didn't want to be found. I nodded. "You were right. I thought maybe you'd come back when it calmed down," she said. I looked at her, really looked, past the shame, past the guilt, to the girl who used to braid my hair in the kitchen while I made Sunday pancakes, To the teenager who slammed doors but always came back to say sorry. To the mother who called me at 2 a.m. the night Jacob was born because she didn't know what a contraction felt like. I didn't leave because he hit me, I said finally. I left because no one said anything after. Rachel's eyes welled up, but she didn't look away. A slap can sting, I said, but silence rots you from the inside. She reached for her tea, still warm. She didn't drink it, just held it. She said, "He's not okay. Jacob, he's unraveling, spending money he doesn't have, drinking, blaming everyone but himself." I said nothing. She went on. "He thinks you picked her over him." "I didn't pick Lily over Jacob," I said. "I picked dignity over denial. He just happened to be on the wrong side of both." Rachel gave a soft, bitter laugh, the kind you exhale when you're tired of pretending. Then she said something I didn't expect. "I wish I had your strength." It hit harder than I thought it would, because for so long, I thought she'd only seen my usefulness, my babysitting, my cooking, my checkbook, my silence, but not my strength. Not the kind that walks away. Not the kind that builds something new when everything else burns down. We sat in silence for a long while. Not awkward, just tired. I didn't forgive her. Not all the way. But I saw her again. The part of her that was still mine. The part that flinched when she told the truth. When she left, there was no embrace, just a nod, a pause. A moment suspended like wet laundry, dripping but clean. "If you ever want to come back," she said, "the door's open. No pressure." I said, "Thank you." And meant it, even if I didn't know if I'd ever walk through that door again. When the bell jingled behind her, Lily returned from the back with Mia asleep on her shoulder. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "I think so." Then I picked up a tray of shortbread cookies and went back to work. Because sometimes, when the world tries to tilt, the best thing you can do is bake it steady again. We chose the second Saturday in April. No reason, really. It just felt like we were ready, or as ready as two women running on caffeine, grit, and unspoken grief could ever be. We bought balloons from a dollar store, chalked up a new sidewalk sign that read, "Soft like your grandma's biscuits, bold like her secrets, and baked like our lives depended on it." Which, in some ways, they did. We didn't expect a crowd. But the line started forming an hour before we opened. 2 women from the clinic came first. Then a couple who'd driven in from the next town. Then a family who said their cousin shared a post about the lemon lavender cookies. Lily looked stunned, like if she blinked too hard, they might all vanish. We opened the door at 9 sharp, and for a brief golden hour, it felt like the world had turned the page. Like all the struggle, the doubt, the late nights spent testing crusts and calibrating ovens had brought us here. Home, finally. Then I saw him. Jacob. Standing across the street in a dented white sedan, hoodie pulled over his head, pacing like a caged dog with a grudge. My stomach dropped. He didn't come inside. Just stood there, watching the line like it owed him something. Then he pulled out his phone and started filming. Live. I could see the red recording dot glowing from the other side of the crosswalk. Lily followed my gaze, her whole body tensing. "Do we call the cops?" she whispered. I shook my head. "No. Let's serve the ones who stayed." But my voice didn't feel solid anymore. Outside, Jacob narrated the footage like it was a documentary about betrayal. "Here's the spot. The place she built with stolen money, funded by lies. She replaced us with strangers. My own grandmother." People, in line shifted, whispered. Some stepped out of line. A couple left. Lily clenched her fists. Her jaw flexed, but she didn't speak. She just kept working the register. I forced a smile at the next customer. A man buying 2 pecan bars and a muffin. "Thank you," I said. He looked at me, hesitated, then nodded. "He's wrong, you know." And just like that, my hands stopped shaking. The reporter showed up around noon. Local, microphone tucked in one hand, camera person trailing behind. She was smiling, the smile of someone who already knew what story she wanted to tell. "I'm just here to get both sides," she said. I looked her dead in the eye and replied, "The ovens are hot, so is the line. Pick one." She blinked, then smiled again. "Can I quote you on that?" "No." That evening, a segment aired on the 6 o'clock news. Family feud bakes into Savannah business. They ran footage of our sign. A few shaky clips from Jacob's live stream. A blurred image of me wiping my hands on my apron, captured mid-step, mid-motion, cropped and frozen to look like a villain exiting stage left. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the bakery floor, legs crossed, apron still dusted with flour, staring at the mixers like they might whisper a way out. But then something happened I hadn't expected. The next morning, a woman I didn't recognize came in, holding a tray wrapped in foil. She was maybe mid-60s. Soft voice. Gentle hands. "I saw the news," she said. "I know who you are. And I just wanted to say thank you for not giving up." She didn't stay, didn't give her name. Just left the tray, banana bread, still warm, and walked out. I stared at it, speechless. That was the first. Then came the others. A pastor and his wife brought a handwritten card. A retired teacher dropped off napkins she'd sewn herself. A teenage girl came in crying, said she'd watched the clip and realized her own grandmother deserved better and that she was going to call her that night. They didn't just buy scones. They stayed. They talked. They saw us. The following Saturday, the line wrapped around the block. We ran out of pecan bars by 10:15. The cinnamon rolls didn't make it past 11. The noise didn't stop. The trolls still posted. The whispers still happened. But we got louder. Not with shouting, but with presence. Every cookie sold. Every child who danced to the radio while waiting for a brownie. Every customer who smiled and said, "This tastes like home." They were our counter-arguments. That night, I stood by the front window, still in my apron, watching Lily laugh with two regulars. Mia was coloring on the floor beside her, using a leftover bakery box as a drawing pad. And I realized something. This wasn't about Jacob anymore. Or Rachel. Or even the past. This was about what we were building. Something that could outlast the noise. Something that could rise. I wrote the letter late. The bakery had closed for the night. The chairs were stacked. The floor swept. Lily was in the back rocking Mia to sleep with a hum, so soft I could barely hear it over the whir of the fridge. I sat in the office, with a lukewarm cup of tea and a sheet of plain white paper in front of me. I'd thought about this letter a dozen times. Drafted it in my head, rewritten it in dreams, torn it up in my imagination. But now, it felt like time. Not for closure. Not for forgiveness. Just to say what needed to be said. I started with his name, Jacob. Then I paused. Let the pen hover above the paper like I was waiting for a sign. There wasn't one. Just my own breath, slow and steady like it had finally settled into my chest for good. Then I wrote, "I didn't leave because you slapped me. I left because you believed you could. And because everyone else believed staying silent was easier than telling you no. The rest came easier after that. I'm safe. I'm not hiding. I didn't pick Lily to hurt you. I picked her because she showed up when no one else did. She brought tea when I had migraines. She told the truth when it hurt. She didn't flinch when I was broken. You weren't replaced. You removed yourself. There's a difference. I didn't say I hated him. I didn't say I forgave him, either. I just told him the truth. The truth I had choked down for too many years. The truth that had hardened in my chest like a stone until I finally spat it out. At the end, I paused again, then wrote the one name I knew would shake him more than anything else I could say. Lala. He hadn't called me that since he was 12. I folded the letter slowly. No return address. Just Jacob, written on the front in the same careful print I used to label his lunch bags in 4th grade. I placed it on the front counter with a sticky note. Deliver to the kid in the hoodie if he comes back. Then I walked out. Not far, just down the block, to the small park across from the bakery where the air smelled like grass and distant cinnamon. Mia was chasing pigeons in tiny boots. Lily sat on a bench, sipping coffee from a to-go cup, one leg slung over the other, like someone who finally believed she belonged. I sat beside her. We didn't talk. We didn't have to. The breeze was gentle, the sky turning blue gold. And I watched the light hit the sidewalk in a way that made the cracks look like gold veins. I thought about everything I had lost. Time, years, pieces of myself I gave too freely. And realized something. I wasn't bitter. I was full. Not just of love or peace or even pride, but of something sturdier. I had built something, not just a bakery, not just a business, but a space where the good parts of me could exist without apology, where a little girl could grow up thinking strong women weren't the exception, they were the foundation. Where I was more than what they remembered, and so much more than what they forgot. Later that evening, back at the bakery, Lily handed me the letter. "He came by," she said. "Didn't try to come in, just stood outside. I gave it to him." I nodded. "Did he say anything?" She hesitated. "He read the first line, then folded it and left." "That's enough," I said. She nodded, and we never spoke of it again. After the letter, things got quiet again. Not online. There were still whispers, reposts, theories, but in our space, in our bakery, the air settled. The work didn't stop. If anything, it deepened. The counter was polished more often. The cinnamon ratios tweaked until perfection became second nature. We started offering breakfast bundles, 2 biscuits, 1 jam, 1 story. That's what the chalkboard said. At least the regulars kept coming. The woman who always asked for the corner scone because she swore it was crispier. The clinic nurse who brought in her fiancé after he proposed. The college kid who sat in the back corner with his headphones, sketching pastries in the margins of his notebook. We didn't just know their names, we knew their birthdays, their allergies, their griefs. One woman cried at the counter once, completely overwhelmed after a morning court hearing, and Lily handed her a muffin, no charge, no words. That's what we were building. Not a bakery, a place where people could fall apart gently and then stitch themselves back together over something warm and made with care. Mia became our mascot. We printed her a mini apron with Flower Boss embroidered across the chest. She insisted on working every Saturday, handing out napkins and invisible cookies. She would curl up in the flour-dusted corner with crayons, while Lily and I baked, her tiny voice humming songs that didn't exist anywhere else. One morning, I caught her whispering to the dough like it could hear her. When I asked what she was saying, she replied, "I told it to be brave." I nearly cried into the batter. Every time I looked at her, I thought, she will never have to wonder if she's wanted. Not under this roof. Not while I'm here. Lily bloomed, too. She laughed louder now, made jokes, rolled her eyes when customers flirted with her and told them she was married to the oven. She hung new chalkboard signs every week, each with a quote. "You can't burn what's already risen. Bake like no one's watching. And also, like it's the only thing keeping you sane. Sugar, yes. Silence, no." We never talked about Jacob again. Not in detail. Not in the way that reopens wounds. We didn't need to. One night after closing, Lily and I sat out back on milk crates, watching the sky go from blue to violet behind the alley fence. She passed me a bottle of cheap wine wrapped in a paper bag. We took turns sipping. She asked, "Do you think they still talk about us?" "I think they try not to." She laughed. "Do you ever think about going back?" "To what?" She paused. "I don't know. To being part of it again." I didn't answer for a while. Then I said, "I don't want to be needed. Not like that. I want to be chosen." Lily nodded like she'd been waiting to hear those exact words. "Me too," she said. And we clinked our plastic cups like it meant something. Because it did. The next morning, a woman came in with her daughter. They'd just moved to Savannah. She ordered a coffee and stared at our sign for a long time before saying, "This place feels like it existed before we knew about it." I smiled. Maybe it did. She smiled back. "You own this?" "Co-own," I said, nodding toward Lily, who was dusting sugar onto a tray of rolls. Her daughter tugged her sleeve and whispered, "Can I draw here?" We handed her a crayon. That day, after close, I walked through the bakery slowly, alone. No music, no Mia, no clatter, just me and the walls. I ran my fingers along the counter edge, touched the framed napkin drawing Lily had made during that first planning meeting. I stood in front of the mirror in the bathroom, looked at my face, older, softer around the edges, gray roots grown in fully now, skin loose, but peaceful. And I said, "You stayed, because that mattered." Not that I'd survived, not that I'd run, but that I'd stayed, with myself, with this place, with the people who looked at me and saw more than what I used to be. That night, I wrote one more letter, this time, to myself. You don't owe anyone softness. You are allowed to take up space. You are not what they remember. You are who you became when no one was watching. I folded it and tucked it under the register. A reminder. For later. In case the fog ever returned. The first real spring storm came the day we introduced the strawberry basil galette. Thunder in the distance. A full parking lot out front. Lily said the rain would scare people off. But they came anyway. Some with umbrellas. Others just wet hair and warm smiles. No one rushed. No one complained. The bakery glowed with bodies and breath and the smell of warm pastry. Mia danced barefoot behind the counter to the sound of Billie Holiday playing low on the speakers. A man with a cane told me the coffee reminded him of his late wife's kitchen, and I thought, this is what healing smells like. Not antiseptic, not sterile, but cinnamon and steam, and people laughing with their mouths full. That afternoon, I stood near the front window and looked at the hand-painted sign one more time. Second rise. Still a little crooked, still perfect. It didn't matter who told what version of the story anymore. Let them say I vanished. Let them call it abandonment, betrayal, selfishness. I knew the truth. I lived it. They watched me leave and called it dramatic, but they never saw how long I stayed after I'd already been erased. They never saw the dinners I made without being thanked, the birthdays remembered by only me, the silences I tolerated just to keep the illusion from cracking. They saw a moment. I carried a lifetime. And when I finally let it down, it was not a tantrum. It was a release, a return to self. I didn't rebuild to prove anything. I rebuilt because there was still something left in me that wanted to rise. And it had nothing to do with money. The money helped. Yes. But it wasn't the 5 million that made me matter. It was the yeast. It was the paint on my fingers. The register I learned to run, the emails I sent to suppliers at midnight, the little girl who squealed every time she saw her apron. It was the walls that smelled like flour and intention. It was the work, the life after the life I thought was final. We added a small bookshelf near the front. Filled it with old cookbooks, local memoirs, poems printed on thick paper and folded into envelopes customers could take for free. We called it the soft corner. Lily started hosting Sunday morning tea hours, quiet tables, soft music, fresh bread, no phones. People came. People lingered. No one asked about the podcast anymore. No one brought up Jacob, except once. A woman stood in line, early 30s, blue coat, red lipstick, nervous hands. When she got to the front, she looked me in the eye and said, "I know someone like him." That was all. I didn't ask who. I just nodded and slid her a lemon scone, warm from the oven. Sometimes we don't need stories, just recognition. That same week, Rachel sent a card. No note, no explanation. Just a photo of her and her youngest daughter baking cookies together, both wearing aprons. On the back she'd written, "Found this in an old box, thought you might like it. I'm trying." I stared at it for a long time. Then I tucked it into the cookbook at the register under Desserts That Hold You Together. Lily and I never stopped working. We never really slowed down. But there was a moment, one late evening, where everything inside the bakery shimmered. Golden hour poured through the windows, softening every corner. Mia was sitting on the floor, drawing suns and cinnamon rolls. Lily was testing frosting for something new, her forehead dotted with powdered sugar. I stepped outside to breathe. The street was quiet. Spring had laid everything wet and green and alive. A couple passed by and nodded, not because they recognized me, but because I was simply there, present. That was enough. I thought of all the years I had spent being furniture in someone else's house. Present, but unacknowledged. Useful, but unseen. I was done with that. Now I was a name on a lease. A co-signer. A builder. A woman with flour in her nails and scars in her voice. And I was never going back to being anything less. Inside, Mia ran toward me, barefoot, waving a drawing. "La la," she shouted. "I drew us." The picture was simple, just 2 stick figures in aprons with giant smiles and a big pink heart between them. It wasn't perfect. It was better. It was honest. She jumped into my arms, laughing, and I held her, steady and sure, as the world kept turning around us.